Is the light that you see after death a reincarnation soul trap? Robert Aho had an NDE, spent 100 years in the afterlife, and learned the truth about the soul trap. Watch today's episode to find out the details, and don't forget to comment in support of Robert. Also, if you've had a profound spiritual experience and would like to be a guest, find the link to apply in my description box. I recently booked another appointment with Jamie of Refractive Healing. I wasn't feeling my best, and there's no one that I trust as much as Jamie to work on my energy field. It happens every time, so I guess I shouldn't have been surprised. But after the session, I felt like a new person. My energy flooded back and all of my symptoms resolved. You may notice that I don't have many sponsorships on this podcast. That's because I only partner with people that I 100% believe in. I'm excited to announce that Jamie has recently expanded her offerings. If you're curious about energy work or you just want to try something new, visit refractivehealing.com to explore her new sessions, take advantage of special offerings, and book your distant healing session today. Thank you to Jamie of Refractive Healing for partnering with me in this video.
In 2016, I had a heart procedure. My near-death experience, the first one, I think you could call it, from a Buddhist perspective, and like many people who are listening to this talk today have heard about the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Okay, so if you take that as a reference point, the near-death experience that I had is literally as far as you can possibly go in a near-death experience. So what happened with me is I'm in a hospital room. I'm surrounded by all kinds of people, and there was a chance I could have died right there on the table. It wasn't a super complicated procedure, but it could happen. It happens. And oftentimes people, when they come to again, they're very angry because it's very painful, and it really, it's a shock, and it's a kind of a violent experience getting in there with your heart and everything. And so I was okay with that. If I died, I died. I had very much prepared for death. I had spent many years meditating on death, and had, intellectually, I understood, this is your body, and you have a mind, and this mind is really transmigrating, and it's conscious, and we are essentially energy. We're a form of light. Matter is a form of light. I mean, all of this what seems solid is sort of energy in motion. And I understood that, and intellectually understood that. I mean, obviously, we don't, kind of walk around in a daze throughout our lives. We have to function. And but I had received some very profound teachings from some very well-respected Buddhist teachers, and I revered them. I just, I was all in. Now, I wasn't a Buddhist from when I was a child. I started life as a Christian, and I was very serious as a Christian. And I think I went as far as I could go, and I needed more. And I became an agnostic for a number of years, and then I became a Buddhist. But now that I'm a Buddhist, I don't reject either being an agnostic or Christian. I realize, oh, that's all part of the same spiritual path. It's the same thing. I needed each of those things at a certain time. Okay, so big, I didn't mean to go off the path there. Okay, so I'm in the hospital and I'm about to get this procedure, and I waved goodbye. I was like, well, this might be the last thing I see. And boom, I became that amazing light that everybody talks about, that light at the end of the tunnel. And I became that light for an eternity. Just boom. And this person that I had been no longer existed. I no longer existed. I mean, I guess that's the easiest way to explain it, even though it's not entirely true. I became integrated with that light. The light and me, no difference, exactly the same. And when you are that light, the idea of a self just seems ridiculous. Like, why would I want to be a person? Why would I want to be a being with all that suffering throughout life, all this misery, everything clouded, no awareness of anything? Just these are beings, you know. And so that light, that amazing, and when I say light, I could say God, I could say the source. You know, there's different ways of explaining that. In reality, there's no human explanation whatsoever that can come close to what that life experience really is. Nothing. So it's beyond anything we can imagine. So we put labels on all different things in our spiritual life, but this particular experience, which I would say it was directly experienced. So I becoming that light, it wasn't even like I went anywhere. It was like, boom, I was there. That's it. I'm that light. And that light, it's so intense that a million suns wouldn't be anywhere close to that intense. You know, right all in orbit around the Earth. It would be not even close. Anything you can think of in this life, this human life, is very dull by comparison. Things that would burn your eyes, like an arc welder or looking at the sun, you know, which you should not do. Those were not even nearly as bright as this. But it was a sense of profound awareness of everything and beyond everything. It was this radiant love and compassion that cannot be defined as just simple love and compassion. It was beyond what we as humans can rationally experience, because it was complete openness. Nothing was hidden anywhere. And the essence of everything was very obvious. So I remained in that timeless condition, what I say is an eternity, because time doesn't exist. That's an illusion that we as human beings create. We need it in order to navigate through the world and, you know, get places on time and, you know, all of that sort of thing. This was beyond what we would call time. It was beyond the fabrication of time. It was beyond physical constraints. So I remained in that state for an eternity. This is something that scientists are incredibly interested in, because this is touching on quantum physics, where, okay, so we have this notion of time, but when you start examining what is time, it falls apart. It doesn't hold together. And so, you know, there's some people speculate that it runs backwards in reality, or that everything is happening all at once. I would say neither one of those things is true, not completely. and also not that it's running in a line either. We are in an eternal now, but we don't realize it. So if we could awaken, we would realize that this now, like this talk this started in the past. That we can't find that anymore. That we can see a recording of it, but we can't actually go there, and we can't see the future either. But we also, being clouded by our own mind, we cannot really see now unless we awaken to that light that I became. So that my first book, Timeless Luminosity, that's what those poems are all about, and that's what I was trying to do, is to write poems that people could awaken. So being there in eternity was very nice. It was very wonderful. Being everything and beyond everything, very, very wonderful. But I started to notice a little dot in the distance, and then colors started to appear, and kind of a dull place. It seemed like it was kind of like in my, I didn't have a body, so I don't know why I would say it was my lower right field of vision, but that's how I remember it. And so I started to notice that, and very slowly, just little by little, I started to remember that I had once been a person.
I wanted to let you know that I am offering 50% off on my 4-session energy healing package. The 4-session package is 25% off already, but I'm offering an additional 25% off because energy healing is by far my favorite work that I've ever done. Included in the package is 4 45-minute sessions where I work deeply on rebalancing your energy centers, infusing your energy field with an experience of potent divine love, and energy work for any specific area of physical or emotional need. I'll also offer feedback on exactly what I've seen in your energy field and give you practical, implementable steps that you can take with you into your life to deeply connect with divine love, spirit, and your own divine nature. Check the description box for the link to my 4-session package.
And very slowly, just little by little, I started to remember that I had once been a person. And so I looked at that. No body, I'm looking at something, but I'm paying attention to it. We'll put it that way. And okay, yeah, I sort of remember being a person. I remember a little bit about what my life was about. I started to look at that and see things like that. And that was when I started to have this overwhelming need to go back into my body. And at first, I'm thinking, I'm kind of debating, it was kind of horrible because, I've been having a lot of health issues, and it's been really difficult. And a lot of it has to do with persistent chronic pain that I've been dealing with for decades now. So it wasn't really something that I wanted to do from a sort of a selfish point of view, but from coming out of that light, I knew I had to go there, and I knew that I had more things to do, and I knew that the experience that I was having right then, this whole experience of death, was something I needed to talk about and write about, and help people to understand why it's important to respect your spiritual path and be very compassionate towards yourself, feel strong sense of love for yourself, and have a desire to awaken. Now, there's a term for that in Buddhism that's called bodhicitta. So it's the bodhicitta is a strong, compassionate, loving desire to awaken, and it starts with yourself, and it spreads to all beings. So it's this on a relative reality level, as it from a human perspective, we spread it to all beings. But on an ultimate level, which coming out of the light, that was ultimate bodhicitta, and it cannot be described. So it's pure, intense openness, and it has depth to it that is sometimes hard to really understand as a human. So in meditation, we go back to that over and over again, looking at helping everybody. That's a very common Mahayana teaching, is to help everybody. But even people who are first starting out on the path, before somebody becomes a Buddhist, and I'm not telling anybody to become a Buddhist because that's your decision. I'm not trying to sell I'm not proselytizing or anything, but it is a decision where a person needs to have that type of desire to awaken themselves. They have to want to become part of this amazing awareness that we all have. We've all got that. This is nothing special about what happened to me. This is something that everybody has experienced before. It's not unique. It's part of our condition. Even okay, so in Western cultures, we get into some debate about rebirth. Do we have multiple lifetimes? From my perspective, from those experiences of death, I could see very clearly that, of course, we have multiple lifetimes. We have so many lifetimes we can't even see that far back. But we don't have to accept that. We can examine that and keep examining that. We don't have to say that as a belief. But we all have these moments of clarity, little flash of light that it's there, and you understand something, and then it goes away and you can't remember what that was. We all have that, and especially in dreams, we have a flash of light in dreams, and then we can't remember what that was. Well, that was clear awareness. That was our real condition, which is we've never been separate from that. We only think we're separate from that. And so you can make a lot of analogies across many different religious traditions and talk about, are we separate from whatever that incredible wisdom is? And the answer is really that no, we're not separate from that. That is who we really are. And that's why we have this spiritual need and desire to return to that. So when I entered that dull area, which I call it dull because having been in that very bright condition, it's dull by comparison. But in reality, compared to the earth, it's still brighter than anything we've seen. It's just all these bright colors and all these incredible swirling vibrations and like bubbles of light and all sorts of incredible things, and a lot of sound and a lot of I don't know, how do you have sound when you don't have ears? I didn't have a body yet. I was still in this energetic condition, but it was part of this and it was being aware of our energetic condition is what it is. In Buddhism, that's called Sambhogakaya. So it's something that is not readily perceivable to most human beings. You have to really start to awaken before you start to notice that. You might have some traditions might say they can see the auras of people, or colors look so vibrant, all of a sudden they look vibrant. So you're starting to perceive the Sambhogakaya dimension. And so I decided that yes, I absolutely need to return to this body, even though from a personal basis, it was not a good thing. It was a very painful thing to do. And so I made that effort. I started off with saying mantras, many mantras that I haven't even learned in this lifetime, but I realized, in past lifetimes I had learned some mantras. And so I was saying these mantras, and then there's these mudras. You might have seen Tibetan lamas do this sort of thing, and there are all sorts of different hand gestures. That has a spiritual connection. I don't use a lot of mantra or a lot of mudras when I do my meditation practice, but I did coming back, and I was so determined that I spent 100 years. It wasn't exactly, I say it's 100 years because it was like a long lifetime. It was twice as long as my current lifetime. It felt something like that. And that's all I did. I didn't have a body, so I didn't need to eat. I didn't need to go to work. I didn't need to do anything other than exist in that energetic dimension. I could have stayed there. I could have stayed in the light, as far as in the what we call the Dharmakaya light. That's the term used in Buddhism. But or the source, I could have stayed in the source. The only reason I could have stayed there, though, I really need to caution people in case they're listening to this and thinking, oh, they'd like to die. No. You're here because you need to awaken. You can't stay there unless you awaken. You have to awaken. And so when I was there, because I was there the way I was there, I awakened in that condition. So when I'm coming back into my body, I needed to fabricate somebody that was not awakened, somebody that I had been before, somebody that wouldn't freak everybody out. Because actually coming from that condition, you can quite literally do anything. You have no limitations whatsoever. But to come back into my body, I had to remember a whole lifetime worth of thoughts, trauma, the pain that I'd experienced. I had the way I spoke. It's important to speak the way you speak, because you speak in a way that's near the people who you live with. So I live in northern Minnesota. I can't hear my accent, but I know I have one. But it's important. These are all things that I had to fabricate about myself. And I say fabricate, meaning that I'm like assembling myself. I'm a construction project. Now, I make a living as an architect, but so maybe that analogy makes sense. But also from a Buddhist perspective, that's what we do when we create self. We create self from identities. We have an ego, all this stuff that puts our self into this nice, neat package so that we can look presentable to people. It's if I was completely not fabricated, I would look a lot crazier than I look. And believe me, I look plenty crazy to some people. So it's a balancing act, But this fabrication of self was done purposefully from that light of awareness, from the source. And I was doing it because I needed to be able to speak from the perspective of this person, or else it wouldn't have any relevance. I would be some crazy rambling person on the street and nobody would listen to me. So so I had to do it this way. I had to come back into this body. I had to go back to making a living the way I was making a living. I had to sort of dress the way I dress and live the way I live. And so I came here. And so 100 years. So difference of time. Time is completely relative and it doesn't exist. But in the Sambhogakaya, it was an eternity in the Dharmakaya, the light. It was 100 years in the Sambhogakaya, or the energetic dimension. And then I saw my body in the physical dimension, and I could hear noises. Even though I wasn't in my body, I could hear these sounds. I could hear people talking. I could sense what was going on. I could sense their thoughts, and they were worried about me, and there were all these things happening that they were trying to make sure I was okay. People in the waiting room waiting for me. My loved ones were right there at the hospital. And so I was getting close to my body, and I heard these the nurses talking, and they had, oh, he's moving. And what's one of the nurses said, well, what's he doing? And so my hands started moving. I was still doing these mudras. And I was still chanting a little bit. I could hear me. And another nurse said, well, he must be a Buddhist or something. And right then, boom, I popped into my body and my eyes opened up. I said, you could be right. And everybody just laughed and laughed and laughed. It was so funny. And, so the whole, I kind of sat up a little bit and looked around, and there were people outside the room, people right in the room. The door was open because there were people coming and going. And there was a desk out there, and everybody heard me say that, and they were laughing. I don't think this is very common for somebody to make a joke like that when you come out of a heart procedure. And I saw my doctor, my cardiologist, and I said, could we do that again? And he said, no way, we're never doing this again with you. And he was like the guy from Airplane. He had sweat coming down his face. And he was really nervous. I could tell he thought he had lost a patient. And so, just all of a sudden, I'm back in my body. And everything kind of calmed down, and I turned to the nurse and I said, I'm pretty sure that I died. How long was I gone? And she said, well, let's look at your chart. I'll show you. And so the what's it called? The EKG tracing was right there. And she said, well, look, you flatlined. This is all this time, and then your heart moved just a little bit here, and then it flatlined and moved a little bit more. And she said, I was only about 5 minutes. So I had flatlined for about 5 minutes. And I said, let's see. Yeah, it seemed a lot longer than that. I was really surprised. So, I didn't talk about it at all to anybody for a little while. Maybe a little hint here or there. I'm a little bit like an open book, so I don't keep things secret very well. I let people know what I'm thinking. So there I was back.
Thank you so much for sharing that story, Robert. And I have to say, I really appreciated hearing your perspective as a Buddhist, because so many near-death experience accounts that I have heard come maybe from more of a Christian or Hindu perspective. So I really, really enjoyed hearing what you shared. And I also love your open-mindedness towards religion as well. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions about your experience?
Oh, absolutely. Go ahead.
One thing I'd love to start with is that you've done some artwork, and you sent me a picture of that so I can put it right up on the screen.
Oh,
but yeah. And I see it's back there as well.
I dug it out just for this talk.
Wonderful. So could you explain what's in there?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so with my experience, as I said, I was instantly the light. And I wanted to paint this experience. It was really hard to do. I could have just done a white canvas and been done with it, because that was so much more than any of the rest of the experience. It was, when you're someplace for an eternity, that's a big deal. So I was in the brightest part of this, what we might call it the end of the tunnel, but I didn't go down a tunnel. I was just instantly there. And so I started to notice sort of in this area first, all these colors and rays of light. And mostly it was a lot of swirling and vibrating, like really great storms. And it was actually, at first started, it was very small, very small. And I started to notice all sorts of different types of colors. And I think this blue dot here, I started to think, I thought I saw a really, it was actually a really large area, but not in this field. It was really small, kind of a heaven. And so I sort of did a little dot there and other little dots here and there that had some kind of significance. And I started to sense that there's life everywhere, not just in our universe, but multi-universes, the parallel universes, and places that are beyond any sort of universe. So like this little heaven here would be beyond any universe. This is sort of in that edge of that energetic field between the light and the energetic field. And then sort of like way down here, a little black dot right there, I don't know, probably doesn't show up very well. That's our universe. The dullest part of this field is our universe. And so I started to notice this, I was still in the bright light, and I started to notice the colors and the swirling and the vibrating and all of this. Now, this Dharmakaya light, the source, is it's so vast that there's literally no end to it. It's beyond belief. So, how do you paint that? The colors and all of that, that's where consciousness arises. So I didn't really have what we would call consciousness when I was in this white light condition. I was fully aware, but I would say not the same as consciousness, because consciousness has more of a relevancy to our own spiritual patterns, because this is like being a drop in a great ocean. This is like, okay, well, now we've got a cup of water, so it's much smaller, almost imperceptible from the light. And then the universe, you've probably seen pictures of the universe that they explain how small our own Earth is compared to the rest of the universe. Our own galaxy is small compared to the rest of the universe. Well, that universe that we think is so large from our human perspective is just a little dot in this field. Just a little tiny dot, very dull, very dark. It's part of of this dense realm. We're in a realm where light can become dense, and that's what matter is. So that's what I did. I mean, I was a little bit inspired by Van Gogh. You can probably see that, but that was really what I needed in order to paint it, is to have that sort of vibration in that field. I think Van Gogh, people thought he was crazy, but I think he was really seeing this type of thing. He could see it. And I think that's why his paintings were the way they were. So, I kind of used him as an inspiration there. And then, all the multi-universes also in the dense realm, and they kind of spread out because they're not all completely dense light either. So, that's what that's all about. So
I have to say, I'm really happy that you painted that, because we haven't talked about this, but I actually have some pre-birth memories. I've shared what I can of those, the things that I've come to have some type of understanding. But I've always said there's so much more that I can't explain it, because I don't even understand what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But that painting that you have there with those colors and the shapes and the little sphere that you said might have been a heaven-like realm is exactly the type of thing that I remember. And so I'm glad. I'm really glad that you painted that and explained it, because it sort of gives me a framework to have a better understanding.
Well, thank you. That's very nice to hear. I'm glad that's what how you benefited from that. It's sort of like, you know, how when we dream and things make sense to us in a dream, and we
Yeah.
wake up and it's like you can't even explain it. What was that? And it
Yeah.
didn't, it wasn't logical at all. It wasn't something we would do in our daily life. Well, this whole death experience is kind of the same way, but the reason that we experience this is because we're completely open to that condition. It's direct experience. So then we often forget these really important messages, these really important experiences. We forget them because it doesn't make sense to us in our daily life. So we cast it aside. We think it's not important, when in reality, it's the most important thing we can learn is what is our real condition?
Mm-hmm.
What's going on here? And it's not so easy to do. I think it's impossible to do intellectually. To really understand what's going on here, we have to experience it directly. So that requires looking inwardly. That requires looking at looking at our mind, looking at our real condition, which we would say is the nature of mind, getting to know that and cultivating that in our life. So there's so many things that we can do to cultivate this compassion in our life. A really simple thing to do is just to be a generous person, just be kind. Practicing kindness starts to open us up. We start to see how wonderful everyone is. We start to see that, oh, this world is a lot more beautiful than I thought it was. And you really start to notice little things. You can be kind, but then you might start going on real slow walks and looking at flowers, looking at insects, just noticing how beautiful things are. And those are, whether you call it meditation or not, you are starting to be aware. You're starting to be present. So when we can start to learn about what's going on, we are tapping into that eternal wisdom that we were all born with, but we forgot. We just forgot about it. That's why we keep getting reborn. So these past life memories are really pretty incredible. My second book, The Frog, I don't know if I sent you a picture of that or not, but this is my second book. This is many past lifetimes and spiritual life across many lifetimes. And what I do say in there is that it's not that important to remember our past lifetimes, but it's important to remember lessons we should have learned in past lifetimes. So we don't need to know where that came from, but we need to know that there's a lesson here that we need to pay attention to. And if we can awaken, we slowly, or maybe, instantaneously, we all have the capacity to awaken in any instant. This is not something that's forbidden. It's not hidden from anybody. It's not secret. It's who we really are. So we can do that anytime we want, but we have to really want that, because otherwise we go right back to our confusing life and all the problems it generates and all the stress and confusion. And, that's, for some reason, we're attached to that. We can't let it go. And if we don't let it go, well, it will keep going on forever. We're in an eternal life right now. And the more you examine what that is, the more you realize that, it's maybe not as great as we think it is. We think it could, really, it's not all it's cut out to be. I should put that phrase. That does not mean, though, that a person should kill themselves, because when a person does that, their problems will multiply and you will be reborn. You won't be able to remain in the light. You will have the additional problems, these are things that we do to ourselves. This is why we have to have compassion to ourselves. And instead of trying to end, just end it abruptly, we need to look at our life and say, okay, if I awaken, then it's not doing harm. Now, one of the things we're here to learn is not doing harm to ourselves and others. And I think I've made this comment many times. I don't know if I've done it in an interview before, but I look at the world like it's a big insane asylum. I look at the world like, okay, people, why are you always making things worse for yourselves rather than better? Because we have the ability to make everything wonderful. We have that ability. But so often people they get very attached to their own negativity and self-destructive behaviors, and it's not it leads nowhere. It just leads nowhere. And they think a person needs to recognize what they're doing to themselves before they can start to really have that drive to awaken, to make their life better, to make other people's lives better. And that's at the core of what we are, of who we are. But we forget that. It's like waking from a dream every day. We forget what that dream was really about. Well, that's what this dream is all about. One of my my root teacher in Buddhism, it's a very important teacher. His name was Nam Kainar Bu. He passed away a couple of years ago. But he said that life is like a big dream with a lot of little dreams inside of it. So he always went back to that notion that this isn't really real like we think it is. I mean, it's real in our mind, but it's not real in the sense that anything can ever be located. It's just like a dream. When you wake up, you realize that, well, there was nothing to that. Why did I think it was such a big deal? If you have a nightmare, you might think, oh, that was terrible. See some terrible things happen. But then you wake up and realize, well, that wasn't really happening. But in my mind, it was happening. So that's one of the things that I became aware of in this experience, both upon coming back, but in that the being in that light, I understood the essence of everything, our life, all this material stuff. I saw the essence of that, and it's not real. It's something we think is real. And we cling to this notion that because our ego tries to make sense of everything. And so we defend that. We're always looking for, okay, that made sense. And I'm going to defend that idea to my death. And well, okay, but we could probably dismiss it at some point. If we examined any idea long enough, we could dismiss it. Any philosophy can ultimately crumble because it's not anything that the human mind can imagine is it's not ultimate reality, it's relative reality. It's our ideas and beliefs from a certain point of view. So that's why we when we look at what's happening, when we continually, if we meditate, we go back to looking inwardly, everything becomes revealed through that introspection. But you can't really explain what it is. So many religions, Buddhism, for instance, will say, that Buddha Shakyamuni, when he awakened, he the first thing he thought was, well, nobody will ever believe this. So he wasn't going to teach anybody. But then people started poking at him. He wanted them to teach. And so there's debate about whether he taught ultimate reality. I would say no, he didn't teach anything ultimate. He taught a path for attaining this awareness. So we could say the same thing about Christ, that he taught about love and compassion, or Yeshua was his real name, taught about love and compassion. Well, that's a path. That's a path, and it doesn't become ultimate until you attain that bright awareness. So he taught the same thing that Buddha taught. It was just in a different way, from a different perspective. And you see this with any of the great religions around the world. There's somebody who had seen something, some wisdom that they couldn't describe, but they helped people to get there. So this is amazing. I mean, this is really amazing that all these different people, great masters throughout time, they were talking about the same thing, even though it doesn't sound the same, and there's all kinds of collisions between different belief sets. And you see that within Christianity, you see that within Buddhism. Every belief set, they argue and bicker about the little fine points, and they're missing the big picture, this open, luminous, timeless state. That's the big picture. So the little details, that's just an argument about, something that's might be good for you, but it doesn't mean it's good for somebody else. It's just how you choose to walk on a spiritual path. And that's why I keep saying it's important. It's very important to respect your own spiritual path and strive to get better at it until you awaken. When you awaken, there's nothing else you can do.
One thing that I get asked a lot is some variation of this question. If we are already what we are in the light, whether we call it perfect love or source or whatever, if we are already that, then why do we come to this physical life, and why do we need to learn love or awaken at all? And do you have a perspective on that?
Oh, certainly. We create barriers for ourselves. We put things in our way that block us from the light. One of the terms for that is demon. We create demons. We create millions of demons. Whenever we're just about to awaken, something stops us. Now, that's not an outside source. That's something we create in our own mind. So that's something that we need to recognize is part of us. And so if we're practicing love and compassion, in order to dissipate the demon, we have to practice love and compassion, because and accept the demons that are there to stop us, because we know that they're stopping us from who we really are. And so they can't, you increase your own light and your own love, your own compassion, and those demons can't stay in your way. It clears them out, they dissolve. And so sometimes people have made the analogy that when you look at the sky, there's clouds in the sky, but there's clear, bright light above the clouds. That's not really true, because we are that light. So we are looking at a sky with clouds in it, deluding ourselves into thinking that we are deluded, that we are having our vision obscured, that we have to go out there to see the light. It's not out there, it's in here. In Christianity, the saying is the kingdom of heaven is within you. Now that is absolutely true. That's where you look. You look inward. You don't look outward for anything. You look inward. It's all here. It's all here in your heart center. This is who you really are. Now, when we look outwardly and we imagine all sorts of things and we believe all sorts of things, that creates obstructions. because now we're thinking that we have to look out there for the light. But if we just realize that we've never left the light, we haven't fallen from heaven, we haven't fallen from grace, we haven't become something dark and hideous. We are the light. We are love and light. It sounds a little bit like a cliche in some circles. Everybody says love and light, but it's true. That's who we are. So when we can't see that, when we're not aware, we become obscured. So we come back to life. I mean, every time we die, we go into that light. And then we're reborn because we haven't yet realized fully that we are that light. So we have provided the fuel, and we've lit the match, and we're flying through this death bardo, this gap between lifetimes, because we have been clinging to this life. We create actions. You know, the word action is the same as the word karma. Karma is not a punishment. It has nothing to do with that. Karma has to do with just things that we create for ourselves. And it's not a material thing either. It's this diluted state. So we have actions that have not been in alignment with that true state that we already are. So we can, you know, there's some circles that walk around and say, oh, I'm not really real, and who would think that, and where would I be, and and you know, saying that I'm already enlightened, there's no such thing as enlightenment. Well, if we're here, that means we have fallen into a state of ignorance and delusion. And how did we do that? Well, it's by our own actions, by clinging to what we think is real without really thinking anything about it. We become this person by fabricating this self, and then we suffer in many ways. We get old, we die. This is our cycle. We're in this eternal cycle, and we've created that. So when we become that eternal light, realize that, oh, that self is not yet awake. That person needs to return to life until they awaken. So they be in that state of awareness because you've already got the clinging to life and being part of a person who has who's living under delusion. So delusion is and ignorance is simply not understanding our real condition. We talk about what our real condition is all day, all night. It's not, you know, but that won't help you. You have to experience it directly. And so we have this opportunity. We have a short life. We're human beings. Oh, that's wonderful. When you're human, you have the freedom to do something like awakening. So this is very fortunate. And so we're not always human. Sometimes we're a different type of being. And it's harder in any other type of realm. It's harder to become awakened than it is in the human realm. Because we're right kind of in the middle of things. So we have this fortunate life that allows us to develop a sense that we need to awaken. Otherwise, we're sort of have this sense of, well, I need to do better in life. I need to get a better job, a bigger house, better car, you know, things like that. Okay, well, you're clinging to things like that, and that leads to more confusion, more delusion. You're obstructing yourself. It never leads to happiness. It leads to in a sort of an inner misery, and it's not respectful to our own spiritual life. Our own spiritual life is, and I can't say what the answer to that is because it's different with everybody, but it's understanding internally by looking within what is true and what's important, and really developing a desire to awaken to that wisdom that is us. So once we awaken, there's no problem. We can come or go as we please. Then we have freedom. That's why in Buddhism it's referred to as liberation.
In another interview, I heard you make the statement, everything is simple. So I've wanted to ask you, what is everything?
Well, our real existence is very simple. It's that Dharmakaya light. There's no complexity to it. You don't have to work hard to understand it. In fact, to understand it, you have to learn how to do absolutely nothing. To just let that well, I should say let absolutely nothing. You have to open your heart and mind completely and just let that shine. Now that's not so easy to do, because when we are human beings, we have a lot of complexity. We're always doing things. We're always adding things. We've always got things to take care of, things to keep track of, all these material possessions. We have to pay attention to the language that we speak. We have to pay attention to the people that we know. We got to remember what it is about this and what it is about that. It's very complicated. That's not actually very important. Those are things that we do as deluded beings. And when we do that, when we make it really complicated, when we're sort of like adding all sorts of stuff onto this wisdom of love and light, the Dharmakaya, the window behind me looks pretty bright, so it's like, it's like, that's it. That's all there is. And when we realize our real nature, very simple. It's just very simple. It's just as it is. It has nothing to do with belief. Belief is completely worthless in that condition. Once we understand who we really are, you don't have to keep repeating that, oh, I'm love and light, love and light. You don't have to say these types of things. It's just very simple, because now you have an ongoing awareness. You're present. No matter what happens, you live in a spontaneous state of awareness, of being aware, but not necessarily doing anything. You're simply spontaneously reacting, and you're not having to make this extreme effort that we all do in life. That's one of the things about awakening, and I may have said it in a previous interview like this, but we catch those little glimpses when we're not doing anything, or in a moment of trauma, or when we're feeling extreme pleasure or extreme pain. You catch a glimpse. It's just a very simple moment. And then you try to do something with that. Okay, I need to tell somebody about that, but where did it go? Okay, and when you talk to circles of people who are very actively engaged in meditation, this is something that they will talk about. I know I've spoken about this with a number of groups, and people are like, oh yeah, when you're really doing well with your meditation, it becomes very simple. So meditation is kind of a good way to practice reality, because you're not adding belief. You're looking inwardly at what is as it is. And so you can become more and more familiar with your real state, and then you can experience that directly once you're ready. And a person has to be ready for that, or it won't stick. Because if, let's say you receive an introduction to Dzogchen teachings, which prior to my near-death experience, I was a Dzogchen practitioner, which is, kind of grouped in with Buddhism. That it's not attaining the final answer to something. It's being introduced direct so that you can experience it directly. And so if you're not ready for that, well, it'll just be like your experience in a dream. You might see a flash of light. Or actually, when people die, that light is usually just a flash of light. They don't necessarily abide in that state of light for an eternity. They'll see a flash of light, and then they'll go to their new body, their next life, based upon their own actions. So their own karma sort of projects them, and it's their own actions that do this. You've created a world around you, and now it makes you've launched yourself someplace. And so, whether you can do that in a controlled state or not, it kind of depends on how well you've mastered your own mind.
It's interesting that you bring that up specifically, because there's a growing group of people who are saying that it's a soul trap. Don't go to the light because you'll just have your memory wiped and be sent back into another body. As somebody who has experienced the light, what would you say to those people?
Well, you're going to experience the light whether you want to or not. If it's time for you to die and then get reborn, you will if you haven't prepared yourself, you will very uncontrollably go through the light and into the next body. It seems when you're reborn, it's not exactly that your memory is wiped. It's really that you've just got a whole new set of problems. People are speaking a different language. If you were, let's say you were human and you're reborn as a human, which is not always the case, but now you're reborn as a human, and you have to learn a new language, new customs, new identity, new way to live your life. Everything's different. You're not necessarily born into the same tribe. You're oftentimes born completely all the way around the world, which my last lifetime, I lived in the Himalayas, and I died as a small child, and I was reborn here. But I did a lot of things as a child that I kept from my previous life. I was seen meditating all the time when I was a child. I was sitting cross-legged, and I had actually lived with a Buddhist family, and then I was reborn with Lutherans. And so my Scandinavian parents thought there's something really wrong with that boy. Why is he always sitting there cross-legged doing nothing? And so I was, doing that at 3 years of age, pretty regularly. And I, used to get angry with my parents because I couldn't explain to them why I was doing that. So my memories weren't wiped. It was just that I had so many different things to learn as a new person. I had to learn how to speak Minnesotan, and things like that. And and then I had to go to school and learn how to be an architect eventually. And I was pretty fascinated by religion growing up, and I really I wanted to learn everything that I could. I explored other religions very in depth. I had a good friend that was a Pentecostal, so I went to their church quite often, and I went to Catholic churches and Methodist and Baptist and Jehovah's Witnesses. I went there once in a while, and I went to just different things. I had friends from different friends and family in different religions. Very interested. Before I gave up religion for a while, it was just part of my spiritual path to take a break, take a breather. And so it's when I think about people who say don't go into the light, first of all, there's no reason to generate fear, because that's who we are. We are that light. Don't go into the light. How can you go out of the light? So what we are tempted to do is to become a a more disturbing person, a person who lives with fear, a person who lives with hate and anger. And that's very, very tempting, even among religious people. They, if they get really political about things, all of a sudden they just hate everybody. They want the world to end, and they just think everything's awful. And well, they're just deluding themselves and making their own suffering worse, making the suffering of others worse, because we are the light. We are that God source. That's us. We're not separate from that. The whole notion that we're separate from that is the problem. That's what causes suffering. So that's what ego does. It creates this sense of separateness. So if a person is, very, like, my religion is the best, but yours is the worst. Okay, first of all, that's just belief. You're just a human. There's nothing special about you being a human. And as far as cosmic beings go, humans are fairly low on the totem pole. We are not that brilliant. It's easy for us to delude ourselves, but we're also smart enough to realize that this suffering is not good. We need to find a way to remove suffering from our lives. And awakening is the only way that we can get away from this terrible eternal cycle. So that means going into the light. Just go into the light. Don't have any fear. One of the first things I told people I think it was probably the first thing I said to someone when I had admitted that I had died. I mean, someone beyond the hospital staff, somebody in my family. We don't have anything to worry about. Nothing. Don't worry about it. It's just wonderful. And, even if you don't awaken before you die, don't worry about it. Your next lifetime, you'll do better. You'll have more of a need to, you'll have created that seed of awakening, and you'll be able to carry on from lifetime to lifetime. That was my second book, The Frog. I was talking about how we, don't give up. I mean, I remember when I was a frog, and I never gave up on my spiritual life. Never gave up. I always sought the truth. I always wanted to know what the truth is. And that meant asking a lot of questions. Don't be afraid to ask a question. I mean, for crying out loud, you're trying to discover what is, not trying to delude yourself. You're trying to get rid of some of these demons by asking questions. And that's a wonderful thing. So that's also going into the light. But you're already the light.
Well, Robert, thank you so much for everything you've shared with us today. Is there any projects you have going on, or anything that you'd like to share with people about how they can get in touch with you? I will have links to your website and your books in the description.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've got my two books, Timeless Luminosity and The Frog, and I thank everybody who has purchased a copy. If you want to get a hold of me, that's fine if you email me at bobaho@gmail.com, BOBAHO @gmail.com. The website is timelessluminosity.com. I will be writing newsletters, and you will be able to contact me through that as well.
Thank you so much for watching. My guests' links can be found in the description box. If you have had a near-death experience, pre-birth experience, out-of-body experience, past or between life memories, or spiritual awakening story that you would like to share, find the link to apply in the description box. If you'd like to support the channel, we have a few fun ways that you can do that. I do have a merch store linked in the description. We've put some of the phrases on t-shirts that you guys requested. I have affiliate links to my favorite blue blockers, my favorite red light panel, and a couple of other companies that I work with. You can join my membership at the Sanctuary. You can sign up for an energy healing. I also offer a 4-session energy healing package. You'll find all these links in the description. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for your support. Now go live your most extravagantly loving life.